Great, and good morning, and welcome to this day on artificial intelligence, on the leap towards Europe, on research and innovation, the collaboration between academia and industry sector, the day, the workshop on artificial intelligence. My name is Morten Goodwin. I will be the Toastmaster today. I'm a professor in artificial intelligence. I also try to venture out in the industry sector, which is very different than academia, but that's a learning experience. I represent CARE, Center for Artificial Intelligence Research at University of Agder, and I'm also part of NORA, which is the Norwegian Artificial Intelligence Research Consortium. For those of you who don't know, NORA is a big organization with almost all of the academic institutions in Norway collaborating towards the goal of reaching good, ethical artificial intelligence. Part of NORA is something called NORA Startup, which is meant to help startups, meant to help researchers who wants to make a startup, help startups that need some academic experience, maybe a professor or a PhD student or something like that. That is the point with NORA Startup. Yesterday, we heard from a lot of people at the Europa-konferansen, among other Nikolai Astrup, former Minister of Digitalization. More than 2 years ago, he launched a strategy for artificial intelligence in Norway. He's a bit disappointed because now it's no longer the Minister of Digitalization. It's become a Minister of Districts. So the artificial intelligence that was a big hype even from the government a couple of years ago seems to kind of not be prioritized that much with the current parliament. But that shouldn't stop us, because we know that artificial intelligence is immensely important. It is the technology of the future. Astrup himself compared artificial intelligence to internet, and he says the innovations that happens with artificial intelligence today should be compared with what happened with internet at the end of the 1980s and the beginning of the 1990s. It is at least this important. And what we see is a lot of academic research on artificial intelligence, of course, but we see also a lot of industry research. The big tech companies are famous examples, which for all practical purposes are research institutions. Google, Facebook, etc. do research. And there's a short distance between research and innovation. As an example, a couple of months ago, there was a new compression algorithm by Google. It is already part of YouTube today. So the distance between an invention of an algorithm to make it usable by the public is so short, very, very short. And that's why it's important that we make sure we do ethical AI, we keep human rights, which our first speaker will talk about in the AI innovation, and that we actually make sure that academia and industry in Norway and in Europe foster. So we have a very exciting day today. We will meet a lot of startups from a startup called IOVEO, working on age-tech. We will meet Jeanette Taraldsen. From Juss AI, we will meet Håvard Ostermann, a company making legal tech. We will meet Alexander Nossum from Kart AI, a company producing construction for municipalities more efficiently using artificial intelligence. We will hear from a lot of groups here, among other Karianne Ormseth from iHub, that aims to give the local industry a boost when they help AI. We will hear from Christopher Liland from UiA Nyskaping, which is the University of Agder's response to encourage greater innovation, among others, in artificial intelligence. We will hear from Ranveig Stalsberg from Innoventus Sør, who is a regional innovation company. And we will hear from Katrine Stien from Digen, which is the leading ICT cluster here in Agder, Sørlandet. And we will, of course, have lunch, and we will even have dinner later. So there's a lot of food, and the point is then to mingle, to find activities, collaboration activities. People are watching physically and also on Zoom. Those that are on Zoom, they can also mingle with others on Zoom, but it's a little bit harder to do it physically. But anyway, you can have lunch when we have lunch and dinner with me and dinner, etc. if you want. Our first speaker, our keynote speaker, is none other than Penninckx. He's the head of Information Society Department, Council of Europe on AI development. He's especially interested in human rights, the rule of law and democracy, and he spent more than 30 years in the Council of Europe. We can learn a lot from Patrick about how to make artificial intelligence ethical, how to regulation on AI is progressing, and how we should really conquer the world outside of our small county here at Sørlandet towards Norway, towards Europe. So Patrick, please, the stage is yours.
I have to switch this on, apparently. It's highly sophisticated here. But some things will need to still be done manually. So I will, it's not a transmission of my thoughts immediately to the computer. So I'll have to disappoint you with that. I would have liked to sit amongst you, but then the organizers thought it was really important to set you in rows like a classroom. Frank wanted to experience once again the classroom setting. So, but the idea is really that I give you a few elements, but I would also like to learn from you what you're doing. So I'm very much interested in seeing what I can pick up from you, because I'm not an engineer, I'm not an academician, I'm not someone that sets up business, starts up business. I'm just a civil servant, an international civil servant that is there to look at developments in society and what those developments in society may imply for a number of, for our living, actually. How do we live? How do we see the future? Because one thing will be to be engaged in, okay, artificial intelligence and startups and do things, which is of course brilliant, excellent. At the same time, the role of people like me is to, yeah, okay, fine, but is everything artificial intelligence does, is that interesting for society? Is that for the human good? It's possibly, but not necessarily, interesting financially for the ones that use it, but maybe not so much for society. So, head of information, I'm the head of the Information Society of the Council of Europe. It says human rights, democracy, and rule of law. Those are the basic values of the organization. That's why after the Second World War, this organization was set up in order to preserve those values. I think we failed dramatically on the 23rd of February with the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation. 73 years of peaceful coexistence in Europe all of a sudden disappeared. Yeah. And what is the link with the war and and artificial intelligence today? This is the first war which is led by artificial intelligence. This is the first war where cyberspace becomes more important than anything else. The moment Russia sets foot on the ground in Ukraine, before anyone else knew, even before the media knew, Russians were already being attacked. So this is artificial intelligence. This is important for us. Now, what I'd like to do with you is not only see, because we have these big words, artificial intelligence for the good, artificial intelligence to promote human well-being, etc., etc. We have to always see what is the gap. I would say we had a workshop yesterday about the implementation gap between the theory and the practice. you're working on that on a daily basis, theory and practice. How does, you know, I mean, you academia, the smart ones, they can definitely say that is where artificial intelligence can go. But when you have to put your hands in the mud, it may be a little bit different from that. And that's the experience of reality, I would say, the reality check. Now, what I will do with you, since this is the setup, I made a PowerPoint presentation. And some people say, do you have something to say or do you have a PowerPoint presentation? I hope to have both. I'll first flick, like if you're in a waiting room for the hairdresser, I'll flick through a number of slides. Yeah. I have, I don't know, 120 slides or something. So either you fall asleep or you're interested by what is going to happen. I hope you'll be interested. For a moment, imagine yourselves in the waiting room of a hairdresser and you pick up one of the magazines and it happens to be a little bit on artificial intelligence. So that's what I'll do. That's the first part. And then comes the boring part, obviously, which is I'm going to say, well, if artificial intelligence is going to be deployed, are there things we need to take into account? Because we can do things, we can do and very often engineers are focused on the product, not necessarily on the societal consequences of it. But to give you one example right now, in the Ukrainian war, in the war in Ukraine, right now, one of the artificial intelligence tools, which is facial recognition, one of the applications of artificial intelligence is facial recognition. Facial recognition is developed at an incredible speed, thanks to or due to its usage in the war. There are many, many questions we can have about the development of facial recognition. Yeah. But war, conflict, and the usefulness of certain things, despite the human rights and other considerations, may start developing AI rapidly in certain areas. Yeah. At a given moment in time, Microsoft, not the smallest company, I would say, decided not to further deploy its research on artificial intelligence and not to sell it to certain countries. Why? Because it allows states to, of course, obviously monitor people all the time. And that is what has been happening, for example, in China with the so-called social scoring. That is, are you a good citizen? Do you cross the road when the light is red? Of course, Norwegians would never do that. But me as a Belgian living in France, I tend to cross the road and I would be socially scored as I get the looks of the people around me when I cross the road. So I know that this is not the right thing to do. But I'm not socially scored by it. I may get a disapproving look from my co-citizens, but I'm not going to be socially scored. I don't get brownie points if I wait, and I don't get put to prison or, let's say, put in a lower ranking. So these are just a few considerations, and I will like you to take you through this magazine in the waiting room. Now, my dear, and this makes it, I hope, does this work like this or with this? Okay. Okay. Now. Okay. This one with the arrow. Okay, so that basically means, you know, artificial intelligence, but then we're sometimes stuck with old technology. I'm sorry, you guys. So I'm basically, that means that I have to turn around if I want to see what's on the screen, and I have to be able to talk to you. So I'll try to do that all at the same time. It's not going to be so easy. But so let me flick through this book and allow me to look away from you for some time when I show you this, because otherwise I can't possibly have everything. I can't turn my back to what I have to see. Okay, so what I will focus on, maybe can this be put somewhere else? Can this be put here? Would that work? Okay, if that works, that's absolutely fine. Then at least I can have a look at you at the same time. So be careful, don't fall asleep. So what I'll look is at these latest developments, and then also show a little bit what is the impact on human rights and democracy, and what are the Council of Europe responses. And that part, I hope that, because we started a bit late, but I hope to finish that in well, let's say half an hour or so. Is that okay for you? Yeah. Okay, so that's what I will go into. Technological, I'll read some of the titles so that you have the image that comes with it. Look at the images, don't worry. I can give you the PowerPoint afterwards. It has a number of very useful references. It's not just a story. It's not only a magazine, because sometimes what I tend to do when I go to the hairdresser, I afterwards would like to keep the magazine because it's interesting. So you will get the magazine afterwards. Okay, so don't worry about it. You don't need to take notes or tear out a page out of the magazine. Technological revolution spreads, yes and no, because you will see during the discussion, AI is already, the hype of AI is already past, my dear. So I'm sorry to say. The hype of AI was the 2018, 2019, when everyone wanted to have a say on AI. Anyone knows how long AI has been around?
70 years?
Yeah, around 70 years. Basically, with Alan Turing. Alan Turing was the one that that coined the term artificial intelligence. But it goes with ups and downs. Yeah. In 2016, 2017, the hype was fake news. Yeah, and then afterward, there's mediatic hypes, and then people jump onto that, and then 2016, 2017, and the following years, everyone wanted to have something to say about fake news. Okay, so technological revolution spreads. Machines are getting smarter, as we know. For example, emotion detection, very important. I don't know if any of you are involved in that. We all obviously live in a digital sphere. Frank was telling me, this is a computer. I'm sometimes surprised because this little object knows more about me than I do. Yeah, it recollects where I've been, in which window I have looked into, which shop I've come across, etc., etc. But also what is interested, what I like, what I don't like. Even if I don't like, if I don't look at it, but if I stay on a certain page for a certain time, it already registers. So we all live in a digital sphere. Technology connects, but also divides. The digital world is also unstable. I saw this famous picture somewhere with a room full of wires and Mark Zuckerberg trying to connect the wires in order to make Facebook and the other Meta equipment work again. By the way, how many of you are on Omegrain? You know what Omegrain is? No? It's the Omegrain is the most recent social media. I see that you're already looking, so you have to be very careful. So that I don't tell you any. Yeah. The most recent Omegle app. Omegle is the most recent social media. It connects people that are completely unknown to each other. It's not a dating site, but it's a social media that through artificial intelligence connects people. Yeah, it's booming. It is booming. I hope you're still not on Facebook, or that you've left Facebook behind. You're probably more on Snapchat and yeah, oh yeah, okay, that's your excuse. That's fine. Usually my younger kids would say, Facebook, that's for the grandparents, no? So be careful about Facebook. Anyway, digital world is not all that stable. But right now, without digital connections, what do we still do? We're lost, right? Our industries are lost because everything depends on it. And that's why I said this is the first war also that plays on artificial intelligence, digital disruption. And that is key because intelligence spreads through that. Yeah. Is technology a bounty or is it a trap? I don't know who knows Yuval Noah Harari. Algorithms already control much of our daily lives. We live in volatile society. No one knows what the future looks like. The new world is unstable. This right picture, AI-powered propaganda, was made way before the Russian invasion. This is how you see that, how much propaganda does to citizens, can control citizens. Tomorrow will be different. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, 5G, the rise of Internet of Things. Internet of Things was also one of those things that we spoke about a couple of years back, now much less. But anyway, also because we know that it's not always all that easy. But the emerging technologies that influence the way our society operates, I found that interesting. That's the 1930 vision of the future. Not all that bad, is it? Not bad. How would you vision 2022 vision of the future? Welcome to the metaverse. You into the metaverse? The new virtual world is in the making, yeah? Meta is hiring 10,000 people in the European Union to build the metaverse. Not bad. What jurisdiction also for this metaverse? Yeah, the meta universe, a parallel universe where emotions, just like a dream, actually, our dreams are very often so realistic that we have to wake up in order to realize that it's only a dream. The metaverse is the same, but you'll be consciously living in it. But what is the potential negative impacts? So there's a number of impacts on human rights, on privacy, on surveillance, on the role of the internet intermediaries, fake news, hate speech, elections, access to information, cybercrime, disinformation, again, flicking through the magazine, privacy. My personal data become increasingly public. I did not do any research on any of you because I didn't have your names to start with, but otherwise I could have. And sometimes when I have visitors in the Council of Europe, I do that. And then I start speaking about someone without mentioning a name. But people then definitely know that I'm speaking about them because there's only one person with such a profile in the room. Personal data are far from being protected. My data become a commodity. Some companies are only raking in data. They don't make profit. They only want to rake in data. Basis for artificial intelligence as well. Privacy and public safety collide. Our messages may be encrypted, but then who wants to break the encryption? Surveillance, your face, facial recognition, it's not only about, facial recognition is not only about face. Facial recognition is about gait, how you walk, how you stand. It's about everything. It's not just your recognition of your face. The government surveys minorities because it's not just to survey anyone. And it's not someone that is sitting behind a monitor to monitor you. It is artificial intelligence that does that. Protesters are being watched and recognized. The fact that this is a red star at the back is only pure coincidence. Technology encourages social control. 40 out of 65 countries covered by the freedom on the net have instituted advanced social media surveillance programs, which means that 89% of internet users, or nearly 3 billion people, are being monitored. What is the role of those internet intermediaries then? They manage your social contacts, obviously. They lobby for their interests. They become the new censors. They will collect data from a very early age onwards. Some of those companies are based in, let's say, Western democracies. Others are much less. Am I then becoming a consumer, or am I a product? What are your data being used for? What does that mean with regard to our access to information, hate speech, disinformation that proliferates, conspiracy theories, fake news, authoritarian regimes that disinform? Are, because, you know, this beautiful Norwegian society in which everyone is free and you're top on the list of media freedom, etc., etc. Sorry, but not everyone lives in Norway. I don't know if that is a secret, but now you know, not everyone lives in Norway. Okay. So that's important to realize, because the moment you like or dislike Erdogan, and you may want to plan a journey or a holiday in Turkey, in Antalya, the Riviera of Turkey, this may have certain consequences. May have certain consequences if you liked or disliked something in order to obtain a visa to go somewhere. Articles with disinformation claims, and that is also the role of citizens, are very often being distributed without their own knowledge. Fakes are used as propaganda tools. Social media, they also enhance a fake perception of the reality, and AI is used to spread misinformation, disinformation. Impacts on elections, disinformation rigs elections, micro-targeting influences voters, all linked to artificial intelligence. Digital election interference also spreads, and you can look at the applications that are being used in different countries. They're not all the same for every country. Access to information. And there, Morten, the link with the internet is actually pretty important, because the development of the internet was without boundaries. Because we had this enormous belief, we give access to information and the world will be better. 30 years later, the world is not better because of the internet. Of course, we do have access. You're too young to know, but at the beginning of the 90s, of course, there's the heap of the internet. But very soon, this internet needed to be organized. And what was the first thing that happened? That was the creation of search engines. Now, when you look something up on the internet, what do you say? You Google it. That was one of the search engines that started up in the 90s. You Google it, right? Google has become your selector of information. How do they do that? They do that through algorithms. Algorithms which fit into artificial intelligence profiles. Facebook, now Meta, uses around 5,000 sophisticated algorithms to fit your profile with commercial offers. That's how Facebook is paid, obviously. You know that in India, they don't call the internet, they call it Facebook, because the access to the internet can only be done through Facebook. So they call it Facebook, not through. Yeah. You disagree with that because you probably are amongst those persons that have the opportunity to pay for your internet access. You're not amongst the billions or the millions of people in India that do not have the opportunity to pay for an internet service provider. And their internet is being offered through Facebook. But we can discuss that. Yeah, we can discuss that further.
Internet was popular in India much more before this Facebook started.
Oh, yeah.
In early 2000.
Yeah. Okay.
When early 2000 internet starts getting popular in India, way before Facebook has started in India getting popularity somewhere in between 2008, 2006, and internet already got popular by that time. So it's not, I disagree with it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine to do so. India has 1 billion population. And the social reality of Indians are very diverse. So we can, of course, look into this exact figures on this, but we can discuss it further.
I agree with you that many internet companies, they provide free Facebook login data so that to attract the customers.
Exactly.
So, yeah, they use that. I agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So internet freedom is also challenged. The link to free, open internet access is not something that is self-evident. Number of countries where popular apps were blocked or users arrested. It's impressive, I think. We also know that because we're speaking freedom of press, freedom and access to the information and press, we know that Reporters Without Borders, which was also at the conference yesterday, situated where we are in terms of press freedom. Do I still have access, really access to information? Do I have access to data? One of your questions, definitely. And the question that you will have when developing AI applications, to which extent do you have access to data to be able to build your AI infrastructure, basically. Cybercrime proliferates. We've seen that also in times of the COVID outbreak with malicious domains, phishing, scam, fraud, fake news, malware, ransomware. So these cyber threats are based on something, vaccine data that are stolen, fake certificates that are sold online, discrimination, our profiling that we're speaking about. Career depends on AI. Increasingly, AI tools are being used to define your career. Algorithm, and that's sexual orientation. If you know what the tendency are right now, also in Europe, about discrimination based on gender orientation, and AI tools are being used in that context, you can imagine what that can mean in certain societies. Algorithms are biased, that we also know. Here, gender bias can make regrettable mistakes. This is an example of the war, but let's also look at it, for example, in the Netherlands, the government agency to dispense social security benefits for and child allocation used algorithms which were highly discriminatory and therefore led to a number of people being excluded from the system. Yeah. So when working on the governmental application of artificial intelligence, we have to ensure that we're not going to integrate already discriminatory measures. So What is then at risk? The right to private and family life, freedom of expression, right to participate in democratic processes. So the Council of Europe, and now I come to the part where I'm saying what we are going to do about it. Yeah. So that's you know, in a magazine you have plenty of pages with pictures, and then you have this boring text. That's where we're coming to now. So the boring text says, well, we are there to assist and to cooperate with member states to change their policy, legislation, and practice to effectively protect and promote freedom of expression, media freedom, data protection, artificial intelligence in line with Council of Europe standards. We do that through different means. One is to set standards, yeah, and then we also monitor if those standards are being applied, and we help and assist member states to do that. Yeah. So that's those standards, that's what I will be speaking about now, because with all the pictures we've seen about what can go wrong, doesn't mean that things cannot go well. And we have to, first of all, make sure that things can go well. And that therefore, from the start, when developing AI systems, we need to take into account a number of elements, reflect on the impact, societal impact, some of our developments can have. It's not to stifle innovation. That is not the idea. It's not to determine what a product should respond to, but it's more to keep in mind a number of items that will have a societal impact. Maybe not in Norway, as I said, but maybe when you're, and many of the AI applications are not only built for one country. You want to export them, right, Morten? The idea is not to stay in a small community and deliver outcome for local music or whatever, but it's to use it worldwide. So we need to safeguard a few things, safeguard freedom of expression, privacy, combating cybercrime, develop digital governments, and artificial intelligence. This, by the way, are my areas. As a head of information society department, these are the areas I work on. Develop digital governance. What is important here is that we do that together with companies. We have a partnership with companies. And that partnership helps us to reflect on what are the items that we need to particularly look into. Because sometimes, rather than a stifling effect, it can be important to be able to set certain regulations in order to allow for the companies to be in a fair, competitive environment. Because if you say, for example, take the example of facial recognition. We say this is a development which may be detrimental for society. But if you have a number of companies that are going blindly into it and say, we know how to do it, we'll develop it, while other companies may have some ethical thoughts about this, yeah, then you're creating a disconnected competitive environment. You cannot compete. And that's also important because very often when it comes to the Digital Services Act, for example, or the AI Act, that is, we want to promote, but at the same time, we're in a specific context. That is, not promote just for anything. We want to promote human rights, democracy, rule of law. In other words, AI for good. That is crucial, I believe. So we've already worked on that. I mean, we started off, I know that some of your startups are basically also looking into the judicial system. The thing is that what we wanted to do is also, and we started off like that, that is to develop an ethical charter for the use of artificial intelligence in judicial systems. We know that in many countries, the judicial systems are overloaded and need some support. Yeah. So we looked into different areas already. And with those companies, we work on providing expertise for Council of Europe studies and receiving expertise as well, like on things like democratic processes and micro-targeting, data protection, cybersecurity, content moderation. All of those issues are quite important to do that. Now, the Council of Europe has a tradition of working on rather technical issues which impact human rights. For example, we worked 40 years ago on data protection. Can you imagine, more than 40 years ago, we started on a convention, which is an international treaty of cooperation, saying we should look into the protection of the automated processing of private information, long before the existence of computers. But that was, how do we protect citizens from the state? How do we protect citizens from the government? So the automated, looking into the automated processes. The same goes for cybercrime. That's the outreach of the data protection. The same goes for cybercrime. 20 years ago or more, cybercrime was minimal. Today, it's a very lucrative business. That's why we have to combat it, and we work with those 150 states throughout the world in order to do so. Now, we also needed to do that in artificial intelligence. And on artificial intelligence, obviously, we started working on data processing, because data collection is primary to the work on artificial intelligence. The use of AI by the judiciary, criminal law implications of artificial intelligence. For example, we work on autonomous vehicles. What is the criminal responsibility of autonomous vehicles, right? Okay, you have the traditional examples. You're driving your Tesla, right? And your Tesla is in a self-driving mode, which is not entirely, it's not a completely autonomous vehicle. Let's not. But the traditional example is always, well, on the one side there is the old lady that crosses the street, and on the other side the small children that are playing, and what decision is the artificial intelligence included in the autonomous vehicle is going to make, and who is responsible for that choice. These are very simplistic ways of describing it. But when, for example, a car in self-driving mode, an autonomous vehicle, there's very many different stages of autonomy of a vehicle. You know, it's goes from driving assistance to autonomous vehicles, which are allowed in a number of countries, by the way. I don't know if it's in Norway. Are autonomous vehicles allowed in Norway? I don't think so yet. In public? In Germany, for example, autonomous vehicles are allowed. Switzerland, autonomous vehicles are, yes. There's sorry? Oh, well, look up. Okay, well, okay. But use of AI in criminal justice systems is important to look at responsibility. How do we look at responsibility? Is it the constructor? Is it the driver? Who is in charge ultimately? Yeah. Bioethics and AI, environment, education, gender equality, children, culture, elections, freedom of expression. In all of those domains, we are looking into the use of artificial intelligence. But we also said we need, and also our Parliamentary Assembly looks into that and has a number of recommendations with regards to that. What we needed to do also is to look at, and therefore we did a number of studies. That is, first of all, what are the existing ethical frameworks? Because there was an explosion in 2018, 2019 on the elaboration of ethical frameworks. Yeah, every unity, every company, every state wanted to have a policy, an ethical principles on artificial intelligence. But we wanted to go beyond that because those ethical principles are fine. It's like the community standards of Facebook. It's good, but do we solely want to refer to the community standards of a private company to be able to say whether something is wrong or bad or good? Yeah? Or do we need, as a democratic state, do we need to agree together on what we want to have? Yeah, I think that's important. It became very evident when Facebook, for example, decided to change its community practice in allowing violent speech against, during the war with Ukraine, to allow violent speech against Russian citizens or against the state, the head of state. You could say, well, why not? Everyone's against Putin, of course. But to which extent is the call for violence and the killing of a head of state, is that something that we should foster or not? And to which extent is it up to the private company to decide whether this is allowed or not, right? Should we allow that? I don't know. I don't like Putin, don't tell anyone. But that doesn't mean, oh, it's recorder, right? Okay, shit. Can you rewind this? Can you, okay. I don't want to have trouble next time I go to Moscow, if ever. Yeah. So, but the thing is, to which extent is it a private company to decide on that? Or should we not have? And then it comes back to your startups, my dears. To which extent is it your decision? Or should it be connected to some kind of a guidance from what we want? Not in order to limit what you're doing, but more in terms of, well, creativity is, of course, thinking up new things. I'm reading from, they put on this frame there. So innovation is doing new things. So that's fine. That's okay. But how is that? How do we frame that innovation? Or do we need to frame it or not? Yeah. I believe that, it's my personal opinion. I think if we would have set some guiding principles for the internet 30 years ago, and that's where I don't agree with some proponents. If we had set some guiding principles for the internet 30 years ago, we would have maybe not have gone into the deviant ways of exploiting the internet today. So the same thing goes for artificial intelligence, I believe. That is, we need to set clear guidance that is not to stifle innovation, but to see what do we want it to respond to. Engineers can develop many things, but we also need to see how, yeah. So that's why we're preparing a legal framework for the development, design, and application of artificial intelligence based on those Council of Europe standards. Therefore, we set up an ad hoc committee. There was a Norwegian representative in there. And I think your consortium may have a role to play in this kind of thing, because there is an interaction between what standards are being set up at European level and what your concerns are. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the detail of this roadmap of what we were doing, but the Committee of Ministers basically said two things, and that will be important for you afterwards to have these links when I send you the organizers have the PowerPoint. They said, well, we're talking now 2019. We have to first know all those guidelines on artificial intelligence that already exist. Yeah, ethical frameworks. You will see later on, there were by 2018, 2019, something like 481 different ethical frameworks to work on artificial intelligence. So we had to look at all of those and derive to the common denominator. And then the next question was, but Maybe there's already all the legal frameworks that exist, which mean that we don't need to have any specific legal framework for artificial intelligence. If, for example, let's say the European Convention of Human Rights is already sufficiently explicit, why would we then need another regulatory framework on artificial intelligence? So that's the second thing they did. First, and that was the so-called feasibility study, look at all the ethical principles, look at all the legal frameworks that already exist, and then look at, are there any gaps left? And it's those gaps that we needed to focus on, because that was then the conclusion of the feasibility study. Yes, there are gaps, and on those gaps, we need to work. That was a feasibility study. The second step was, well, if there are gaps, what should then be the elements that constitute such a legal framework for the future? And that was the second task of that committee, which ended at the end of 2021. And now we're in the third phase, that is to write the legal framework. That is the next step. That is, with those elements, where are we going? And that basically means what we're working on is what they call a transversal thing. When I gave you the example of the autonomous vehicles, that is what we call a vertical approach. That is, in one line, if, let's say, facial recognition, if we do facial recognition, what should this respond to? How should it be used? How should it not be used? What should we develop or not? Because those that are exploiting facial recognition will say, well, it allows us to catch the criminals. Yes, it allows you to catch the criminals, but it also allows you to look at who is demonstrating, who is participating in a demonstration, who happens to be at a railway station at some given time. I don't know to which extent Christian Sand has many facial recognition video applications. I don't know. That I don't know. I don't know. Do you know? How many? Sorry? For cars, yeah. For cars, for example, recognition of license plates, automated recognition of license plates, which is already an intrusion to private life, quite frankly, because it basically means that. Sorry? All of the parking garages, and you say, well, we want to prevent crime. Yeah, okay. But by wanting to prevent crime, how far do you impeach on person's liberty and freedom? Do you have to walk with a hat in order to be able to, and that's even not enough, to which extent? Because, by the way, with the masks, and people thought with the mask, well, in fact, quite a number of the of the facial recognition sign, allow, convenience. Yeah, those are the arguments being used. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, a lot, and that's we had this workshop or panel discussion yesterday, and I paraphrased Abba, saying it's all about the data. It's all about the data. We generate data. How many of your how many applications are on your mobile phone right now? Yeah. Is your, sorry? Yeah, 13, 14, no problem. Yeah. Is your data is your location data on? Most probably, because you want to find your way to this place. Fortunately, I had someone guiding me to come here, but otherwise, so we're constantly gathering data. Why is that possible? Because, and some companies, as I said, are focused solely on gathering data. I call it the gold rush. It's the data rush. Right now, despite the GDPR, collecting data is like walking through an orchard and pick all the fruit you can get with the additional advantage that according to the season, the data renovate and come back. Yeah, that is data collection. And that is what artificial intelligence is based on. Okay, and we need to ensure that this is done in a proper manner. Okay, justice and public. I know that some of you may be working also on AI applications in the public sector. I gave you the Dutch example before of how AI applications, and then I'm almost approaching the end of what my time that I allotted, is what impact, because of course, when you're speaking about AI applications in public governance, this will have an immediate effect on the beneficiaries of a public administration. Immediate effect, and sometimes devastating effects. It was an enormous scandal in the Netherlands to find out that an algorithm was deciding, and primarily for minority groups in the Netherlands, to exclude them from child allocation, child allowances. So there we are into a system that has enormous consequences. So what do we say? Okay, I brought only a couple, but you can download these. A legal framework for AI systems. There's the feasibility study that we did, but also the criteria we're going to use, and that was done together with the Alan Turing Institute, by the way. So these are things that you can definitely download, and you will see what the elements are. So we said these are the main elements for a legal framework. These are the possible options that we can take, and these are the mechanisms to ensure compliance and effectiveness. Now, we note that there's no legal vacuum, but there are substantive and procedural gaps when dealing with AI. There are uneven protection levels. There are uncertainties which affect the development and implementation, and ethical frameworks and soft law instruments, they have major limitations. So what are the relevant conventions there? I will not go into that. But what we needed was need for a comprehensive governance framework on the use of technology, need for clear rules regarding predictability, the regulation and innovation, transboundary nature of the impact, and cross-border trade implications. These were the AI initiatives, the ethical frameworks that I was speaking about. As you see there on the right-hand side, we identified 474 documents which had AI guidelines. Some of the international organizations and national authorities, such as the UK and Germany, were of course very high up. The United States, Council of Europe, United Kingdom. 2018, 2019 was the summit of all the ethical frameworks. Yeah. What are then the key values that we want to stand for? And they may seem very generic. Human dignity, prevention of harm, human freedom, human autonomy, non-discrimination, gender equality, fairness, diversity, transparency, explainability. Transparency, explainability, tricky. Yeah, tricky, because there's also always this black box effect that we are thinking about. But of course, black box also means that we cannot identify who is in charge. Yeah, so that's important to data protection, privacy, accountability, responsibility, democracy, rule of law. And therefore, the need for this appropriate legal framework. Key thing there is, what is the risk? It's a risk-based approach. And that's also the AI Act is based on risk. That is, to which extent does the application, AI application that you are developing has a serious, potentially serious impact on the individual or the society. That's the key. That's the key thing. If you're working on Spotify and want to make your music list, and maybe you will disagree with that because it also has an impact, obviously. If these are a low risk for the individual or the society, I don't think we should be legiferating about it. It has to be those applications that are going to possibly have a serious impact on the lives of individuals or society or social groups, minorities. For example, gender, sexual orientation, many different aspects that can come into play there. So we want to focus on preventing and mitigating those risks and promote socially beneficial AI applications. There's a question of the dual use, because I mentioned the war in Ukraine to start with. And obviously, that's also key. That is, to which extent are the applications that you're developing are also to be used in wartime. Okay, I will largely keep it. The risk classification, of course, is key to that. And we can go into the elements if you like. There is specific elements for the public sector and also for democracy and democratic governance. And those elements are outlined in the study that I mentioned there. Okay, are there any? Oh yeah, maybe one last thing, that is, we have the Global Policy AI, that is a website which englobes all the work of the international organizations at this point in time. What are they doing? And that concerns Council of Europe, Commission, Fundamental Rights Agency, the United Nations, UNESCO, OECD, and all others. Voila. So if you have specific questions, you can refer to those websites. There's one specifically on AI. The others are also there for information, but I hope that this somehow helps you, and I'm ready to answer your questions.
So